Hi, Liz here, and we are at EMO's Creative Studio, where anything and everything you create is beautiful because you created it. And today we're going to continue talking about half square triangles. And the last time we were together, I showed you how to make a pinwheel. Now let's go ahead and show you how you can expand on that pinwheel and make a really pretty block called the Carpenter Star. What we made with the first set of half square triangles was something called a friendship star. Then we expanded that into something called a ribbon friendship star. And last time we learned how to make a pinwheel. So what I've decided to do this time is draw it out on graph paper. Maybe that'll be a little bit easier for you to see. And then after you see what we're going to do with this pinwheel, how we're expanding on it, then I will put it together with fabric so that you can actually see what it looks like. So again, remember last time we learned how to make a pinwheel using half square triangles. And let me show you. You see how it looks on the graph paper? I'm going to actually show you what it looks like using the fabric squares, or the fabric squares that I've put together and cut out. No, that's not right. It's this way. Even with the drawing, I get confused. Sorry. What you need to remember is, dark goes this way. No, this is still wrong. There we go. How we're doing this pinwheel is dark light, dark light, dark light, dark light. And it's 4 patches sewn together up here with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then sewn down here with a 1/4 seam allowance. Ironing to the dark side, so that means this row you're going to iron your seam to this side, and this row you're going to iron your seam to this side. Then what you're going to do is you're going to nest your seam, and I'm going to draw you that on the graph paper in a minute, and you're going to put your 2 rows together. That's your pinwheel. So let's expand on that, and I'm going to take you to a smaller drawing that I made. Hopefully everything will stay in its place. Now you see right here, we've got that pinwheel. Smaller version, we've got that pinwheel. And now what we're going to expand and make is something called a Carpenter Star. And from there, when you make a Carpenter Star, you can expand on making a Carpenter Star wheel and some other Carpenter Star wave and so many other patterns. But for right now, today, we're going to learn how to make the Carpenter Star. So you see in my depiction, let me just move my little blocks away. My depiction is showing you that in the center, you have your pinwheel, and all the way around, with the exception of these 4 corners, we're using half square triangles. See that? Now every line is a stitch line where you're going to have a seam allowance. Every black line here is showing you what it will look like put together, and that is the seam allowance. There is that. So now let me show you what it's going to look like with the actual fabric. I have myself a board, a foam board that I bought at my local office supply store. Let's see, let me turn it this way because you're going to be able to see it a little bit better. All right, remember I said, oops, I need my picture. We're going to start it off with dark light. Then we're going to do dark light, then we're going to do, no, that's not right. That's right. Dark light, because we're going in a circle. We're going to do dark light, and then we're going to do dark light, dark light, dark light, dark light. In this particular picture that I've shown you, and I'll show you the depiction again. This one. You see how there's, if you look at it from far away, you see that it's a very pretty star. Now let's show you how we're going to make that. I have my squares, my half square triangles here. And what I want to do is I want to expand on this look. So let's see if I can get the whole star in so that you can see what it looks like. No, this way. And while you're making this, this is also going to show you what kind of, there's another block that's going to be coming out in this, and I'll show you that in just a moment as I'm putting this out, because I want to calculate this correctly. Now you can see how the star is building out as I place these half square triangles in the proper spot. Right here, and then right here. Now you notice it's expanding on the pinwheel. The other thing I want you to notice, and I'm going to move this up just a little without messing it up, you are forming another type of block. And this particular block uses rectangles and squares. And this particular block is called the flying geese. And that is one of the blocks that I'm going to show you how to do in a future video. So let's continue expanding on this Carpenter star. I have 4 blocks that I have cut. These are just squares. They're stuck together, sorry. Like this. I'm going to put it up here to take care of the corners. And I'm going to put this one here, and I'm going to put this one here. Now, do you see how it's turned out to be a really pretty star? The other thing I want you to notice is that there's 4 rows with 4 blocks in each row. 2, second row, 1, 2, 3, 4. Third row, 1, 2, 3, 4, and fourth row, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the way I'm going to connect this is I'm going to take a row at a time, and I'm going to sew this one to this, right sides together, and then I'm going to sew this one to this, right sides together. After I have that done, I'm going to press them open with my seams going to the dark side, and then I'm going to connect this section to this section. Then I'm going to move on to my second row, and I'm going to sew this one and this one together, right sides together, and then this one and this one with right sides together. In this particular row, this fabric, the lighter fabric, is going to be considered the lighter color. So when I iron or press my seams, I'm going to press it to the dark side over, the dark side over here, because I've pressed it to the dark side up here. Remember, we're going to nest our seams. It's the same thing. I had pressed my seam to the dark side over here, so I'm going to press it to the dark side over here. Now, something else I want you to remember. When you look online through all of the different sites where you can find blocks and patterns and whatnot, you're going to see a lot of these Carpenter stars made with more than just 2-3 colors. This particular Carpenter star is made with 3 colors. My solid, which is right here and on the corners, and then my dark fabric and my light fabric. I have my first 2 pieces from my row 1, and I'm starting from the right side. I don't need to match any seams, so I could just put right sides together. Just make sure that my 2 pieces of fabric are even. And I'm going to go ahead and line it up. On my machine, I've already told you in all the other videos that this is a 1/4 inch quilting foot, and I know that this is a 1/4 inch from the needle. So we're going to go ahead and sew this side really quick. Now, since I'm not connecting the sections together yet, what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to chain piece to save on some of the thread. So now I've got the other 2 pieces from my row, and I'm going to go ahead and sew them. Remember, there is no seam to match right now. I'm going to go ahead and cut this. I'm going to cut this apart. I'm going to go ahead and press the seams, and I'll come right back. I've pressed this. Remember I said I'm going to press them to the dark side, and that's how this is right here. And then in this section, that's how it is right here. So now I'm going to put these 2 together. And here I have to be very careful that I match the seams down here. So let's put our right sides together. I know I have to sew across here. Let me nest my seams because I know facing me the seam allowance is going to my right side, and when I flip it like this, seam allowance is going to the left. So let me go ahead and nest it, and I'm actually going to put a pin in through where the threads are at and try to bring it up through the threads. And if you flip it over, it should be right where you put them on the threads. So let me turn it. And let me get it underneath my... Okay, we fixed the malfunction. My thread broke. So we're going to go ahead and re-sew this seam. I want to make sure that it comes out straight. I've got my pin moved out of the way. And there you go. So now I've completed my first row. My seam should pretty much match and give me a really nice point right here, and it does. Let me go ahead and construct the second row, and then I'm going to show you how to put the rows together. Remember I said I was going to show you on the graph paper what it looks like to nest the seams? So here is the thread of your seam. Here is the top fabric. Here is the bottom fabric. Your fabric is going beyond, it's extending beyond the line, and this is your seam allowance right here. Your seam allowance right here. You see how the seam allowances are going in opposite directions? Like that and like that. Let's make this bigger so you can see. When you nest them together, you're bringing the edges together so that they can meet right here. And then when you're sewing and you turn your item over to the right side, your seam will look, let's see if I can, really nice like this. Okay? When I'm sewing these half square triangles, this one and this one, like in the second row, I want to make sure that I keep my seam allowances going in the direction that I press them. Top fabric is going in this direction, bottom fabric is going in the opposite direction, that way. So let me show you real quick. I'm chain piecing, I'm hanging on, and I can feel the seam allowance down here at the bottom. So I want to make sure it goes under my needle the way it was pressed. I now have my first 2 rows pieced together. Row 1, row 2. Let me slide them close together and you can see. You notice that there is an angle here and an angle here. When I first put it together, I had it like this and I went, wait a minute, there's something wrong. You have to be careful how you line these up. And now it is aligned correctly. Angle here, angle there. Angle going up to the right, angle going up to the left, and this is the top. Okay, even the most seasoned quilter is going to get a little confused because of the direction of seams. So remember, this first top seams, I did the outer edges to the dark side, and the inner edge I just picked to go to the right. On this one, again, the seams are to the dark side, and I knew that this one, the first row, was going to be when your right sides are facing you, the seam allowance was going to go to the right, so I needed to make this one to the left so that I could nest my seams. So now I'm going to take row 2 and place it right sides together with row 1, and I'm going to nest my seams this way, and they just fit in like a puzzle piece. I'm going to go ahead and place my pin in like this, and hopefully it's on the thread, and yes it is. So the seam, well, it almost is. The seam is going to come out almost good. So now let me nest these seams together. Again, I'm going to place my pin here and up through the threads. Yes, perfect. And then I'm going to nest these seams together. Again, we're going to place our pin in and up, and let's see. Yes, we got it right on the seam. You can go ahead and pin your top and bottom edge if you like. You know I don't like to pin, so I'm not going to do that. I'll be honest with you, I don't like to pin. I'm going to stop right here because you see my pinning gets a little distorted. So I'm just going to pull the pin out and keep my finger there. And then I'm going to go ahead and sew, making sure my seam allowances are in the correct position. I'm going to stop right here. I think this one I can pull it out just enough so that I can sew and not hit the pin. I'm going to go ahead and stop to make sure I've got everything nice and even and straight. And go ahead and sew. I'm going to stop again, move my pin out of the way, and then I'm going to try to make sure that everything is all lined up and even, going all the way across this, and now we stop. I'm going to raise my needle because I want you to see what it looks like, and I can get my half of the block that I've sewn together underneath so you can see what it looks like. There you go. Point is almost good, but I've got to press it. I've got to press this seam open. So let me go ahead and construct everything else and then put it together so you can see what it looks like. it is important to make sure that you are very specific in your 1/4 inch seam allowance. When I first finished sewing this and I opened it up, it was off. The seam were way off. Why? Because I didn't do a perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance. I took these 2 rows apart and I redid it. Now, if you can see, let's see, let me get this to look a little better. You can actually see that the seams are almost perfect right there. It's paramount that you actually use and follow 1/4 inch seam allowance. Any deviation to, adding to, or subtracting from, because you're not paying attention to your sewing, is really going to affect what your project looks like in the end. This has taken me a really long time to get better at this. I'm not in any way perfect. I probably never will be perfect, but I get pretty darn close to having matching seams. All right, let me continue working on the 3rd and the 4th row, and then I'll show you how to put this section with that section. I now have my 2 sections sewn together, row 1, 2, 3, and 4. And what I want to do is I want to square up the 2 ends that are going to be meeting, this one and this one. I'm going to take a long ruler. I'm actually doing it from the side, so I hope you can see it all. I know that my stitch line is the straightest line possible. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use this white line right here. Can you see the white line? And I'm going to line it up with my stitch line. And I don't know if you can see. I'm just going to take off 2 or 3 little threads to make sure that this is lined up as perfect as possible. So I'm going to take my rotary cutter, slice off, and you see there's just little threads. I'm going to take that and move it to the side. Now I've got a nice straight line right here. I'm going to put this off to the side, and now I'm going to turn this one around. Remember, we've pressed this. I can already see that it's all jaggedy. I'm just going to move it up. Again, on this ruler I have a white line, and I'm going to match that white line up right here to one of the stitch lines. Make sure that my ruler is straight so I'm not cutting off all sorts of stupid excess. More than, not stupid, but more than I'm supposed to. And I'm sorry if my head's in the way. Everything is nice and neat. And here we go. We're going to slice all the way across. Move this out of the way, and you see all the excess unevenness is gone. So now I've got 2 sections here that have been squared at the bottom. I'm going to turn this around because I know this is the bottom, and here's my top. And now what I'm going to do, I want to make sure that I have the right thing here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on top of this, right sides together, and I'm going to nest my seams. I always start in the center, especially when I'm working with a block that is not so big and I can actually maneuver it and use it. I'm going to stick my pin in through the stitching, and hopefully it came out in the stitching on the other side, and we'll turn it And no, it didn't, so this is not nested. Let me go ahead and face it in my direction because I am working from the side right now. Let me see if I can turn this so you could see it. Oh, down here. I'll throw my pin in. Hopefully it comes out on the other side in the stitching. Nope, it's not. So I need to see what's going on over here, why it's not coming out. It's so off. Alright. Let's see if we can do this again. We are going to match our seams by nesting. Feels like it's nested well. Again, we're going to stick it through and hopefully it comes out on the stitching on the other side. Sorry, I've got it up in the air so I can see it and you're not seeing it. Oh, it's pretty close, but not close enough. So I'm going to move this top one just over just a little. Stick my needle in. I'm still off just a little bit. It takes precision, it really does, and patience. Patience and precision. Alright, we've got it as close as we can get. Let's go to one of the side seams and let's nest it. Feels like it's nested. Stick the pin in, through. Gosh, I'm having a hard time here. Let's see. Was I successful this time? Close enough. We're going to nest this seam. Grab another pin. Place it in, out. And this one is good. Alright, let's go to the machine and let's see how we're going to sew it. I'm going to give you a side view of the sewing this time so that I can actually see what I'm sewing. And I can get that accurate 1/4 inch seam allowance right here. So let's see if I can not have my hands in the way so you can see. And here we go. Now I'm just going to move the pin just a little bit so that my needle is not going over it. I'm still maintaining my 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now I'm going to stop right here because this is the big bulky center. And I'm going to go ahead and pull out my stiletto so that I can maneuver this fabric without it getting caught underneath here. There we go. And I just pulled it ever so slightly gently on the other end. I'm going to stop this because I see that my fabric is off. And I'm going to go ahead and go like this. And I'm going to finish it off. Pull out my pins. Pull out my pins. I'm going to raise my needle so that I can stick this underneath so you can see. And there is your Carpenter star. Here's the top, go all the way to the bottom. There it is. Now I'm going to turn around and look at it and see if I've matched my seams. Oh yes, I did. All right, I'm going to press this out, and then I'm going to turn you to the cutting mat so you can see what this final Carpenter Star put together looks like. Now here's my Carpenter Star all put together. Isn't it pretty? I really like the way it came out. There's the bottom. Here are the points on each side. Points and points. So now what I need to do is square up this block. I don't want to get rid of too much of the material because I need these points to remain for when I connect it to something else. So let's go ahead and try to square up this Carpenter Star. Again, I'm going to use my white line that's right here. That's right here. Can you see? And I'm putting it up against the seam allowance. Go ahead and I'm just going to run my blade across, and now I've got my first side that is all squared up. Just a few little pieces of thread. Let me go ahead and turn my block around. Yes, you can see it. I'm going to line up my white line. It looks like my center right here is bowed out, but that's okay. Let me put this out of the way. Grab this. Let's turn this around so we can do another one of the edges. Again, I'm using my white line to line up on one of the stitch lines. Go ahead and just slide my cutter all the way across. And now we're going to do our fourth side. Fourth and final side on my white line. This side seemed like I took quite a bit off, but I don't think I did. So now my block is squared up, as you can see. Now let me go ahead and measure the final size of this block. It's a little bit over 12 inches on one side and 12, a little over 12 1/4 on the other side. So let me measure this side again. 12 1/4, 12 1/4, and 12 1/4. Okay, that's not too bad for not using any arithmetic and just figuring it out. These actual corner blocks are 3.5 inches unfinished. The pieces, the squares that I used for the half square triangle were 3 7/8 inches. So this is not a bad size. This is very pretty. I really like how this came out. Again, this is the Carpenter Star. Carpenter Star. We're using a pinwheel in the middle to start off, and then half square triangles to construct the star. Now, there is a way of constructing this star without having a seam down the center, and that is where I'm going to teach you that in an upcoming video in the future, where we can construct this with 1, 2, 3 pieces on the top, 1, 2, 3 pieces in the middle row, and 1, 2, 3 pieces or blocks in the third row. Very easy, but the construction of this flying geese is going to be a little bit different, and there will not be any seams running down the middle. I don't mind the seams down the middle. It gives it a different look, and I really like the way this turned out. I'm Liz. We are at EMO's Creative Studio, where anything and everything you create is beautiful because you created it. I am on social media, Facebook and Instagram, and you'll find that information down below in the description box. I also have an email that will be listed below in the description box. Until the next time, happy quilting, happy sewing.